Hi, this is Dan Runcie, founder of Trapital, and you're listening to Your Morning Coffee, your place for weekly insights on the new music business with Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
From Billboard, 4 takeaways from the RIAA 2023 mid-year report. Prices rise, subscriptions slow, and more.
From Multiple Sources, artificial intelligence in the music business. What you need to know.
And from Symphonic, 6 music industry topics every musician should learn about. Only 6? Yes. We've got a whole bunch of stuff to talk about today. We're glad you're here. Jay is checking in from lovely Nashville, Tennessee.
Yes, sir.
And we're going to start the show right about now.
Stand by for transmission.
This is London calling.
Wake up! Your morning coffee is on the air. On the air. On the air. On the air. On the air.
Standing by.
Your morning coffee, the weekly music news for the new music business. It's the highly curated, agitated, advocated, moderated, and liberated digital music information that you need to know. We are your digital music authority. And now from our studios in Hollywood, California, here's your hosts, Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart.
Well, Jay, look at you in Nashville, Tennessee again. That route between LAX and Nashville, you could fly the jet. I mean, you've how many times have you been to Nashville in the last calendar year?
I go out to Nashville quite a bit. I love it here. It is so inspiring to be around so many talented people. And listen, there are good songwriters and musicians everywhere, but Nashville is special. It is the mecca for really talented songwriters, musicians. It's just on another level.
Well, and just geographically, it's in a relatively small area, right?
Yeah.
And so you can't turn around without seeing a venue or a happening event going on, or an artist or something like that. It's really compact, and it's just so chock full of just fun music happenings, man.
Yeah.
It's a good place to be hanging out.
And it's growing so fast. Every time I come to Nashville, the city's bigger. The roads aren't getting any bigger, but you'll see somebody playing music at the airport or in a restaurant somewhere, and they are world class. It's really crazy. I'm here for Americana Fest. It's been such a great week. I did this amazing panel that was moderated by Michael Burrows, our friend over at Symphonic. The panel was called Standing Out in a Crowd, Digital Music Strategies to Propel Your Music and Grow Your Audience. And special shout out to Caitlin Parmenter, Ashley Alexander, Dustin Boyer. Just a fantastic panel. We had a really great conversation. We talked about tools and techniques and what to avoid and just ways to grow your audience. And I think we all learned a little bit from each other. And I know the people in that audience came away with some actionable things. So it's besides that, and then all of the different showcases and different, I went to the City Winery last night. Man, it was just fantastic.
It's fun and a little bit tiring, but boy, to have that much music in that space and to be learning about different things, and I know how much you enjoy being on panels.
Yeah,
it's by the time the whole thing is over, I'm sure you're pretty knackered on your way home.
Yeah, I'm exhausted. I have a couple more showcases this weekend, and then I'll be home on Monday. But as I was telling you before we hit the record button, that 2-hour difference is a lifesaver, because it's much earlier for me.
Yeah, that's right. But of course, when you travel, just as you're adjusting to the time where you are, in this case in Nashville, then you go back home and then you're kind of out of whack. So
yeah,
I know that feeling. But a lot of good stuff to talk about today. And,
oh my gosh, so much.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about NFTs. You remember, Jay, when NFTs sold for millions of dollars? 95% of the digital collectibles may now be worthless. This was from an article in Business Insider. Oh, my goodness.
Right. Well, most NFTs now, they're worthless, less than 2 years after that real bull run on digital collectibles. So they have this study in Business Insider examining more than 73,000 NFT collections, and they found that 95% of those have a market cap of zero.
Out of the top collections, the most common price for an NFT is now just between $5 and $100.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Yeah.
How quickly. And what I saw, what was fascinating too in the article, is by their estimates, almost 23 million people hold these worthless assets.
Yeah, 23 million people, have bought them, and now they're not really worth much. But let's look at the other side of the fence. There was this really cool op-ed in Music Network by Bruno Gaze, and the headline was, "NFTs are the future framework for music royalties." And I thought that was really interesting.
Very interesting take. It says, through smart contracts, NFTs can specify and enforce how content may be used, thereby offering a unique way for content owners to monetize their assets across tomorrow's distribution channels. We're talking the metaverse, gaming, VR and AR, and AI. Unlike the restrictive capabilities of traditional digital rights management, or DRM, NFTs can act as inclusive solutions that encourage derivative works and collaborations, all while automating settlements between rights holders.
Right. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. The underlying technology of Web3, NFTs, DAOs, things like that, they're going to be around a while. And it's foolish to sort of dismiss that, right? So beyond traditional usage, NFT-based licensing can pave the way for innovative models like STEM licensing and AI-generated content. It can also incorporate standard practices like mechanicals and neighboring rights directly into the digital assets. So to navigate this complex landscape, the industry should use the current lull in Web3 and all of these activities as a period of careful planning and testing.
Yeah, so Bruno Gaze is the CEO and founder of a digital asset management platform, Revelator, and a former director on the board of the Merlin Network. But, you and I were talking before we hit record, and, especially when we were back at Universal and in this advanced technology group, kind of in the early days of looking at all this stuff, there tends to be, I think, this sort of enthusiasm when there's a new technology to just kind of blanketly say, this is it. This is the future. We've hit on this.
Right.
And then
how many times have we seen that?
Oh, gosh, so many times. Yeah. This is what's next. This is what's happening. This is going to take over everything. And in fact, usually it doesn't. Yeah. And we I think in all industries, but especially in the entertainment space, we tend to be looking for that next answer and a little overenthusiastic. So it is interesting to see the whole NFT thing. Not surprising, but it's interesting to see.
So don't dismiss the technology. The bubble burst on NFTs as collectibles. The emperor didn't have any clothes on. But please don't dismiss that technology because it's going to be around a while. Now, this week we had a pretty big announcement that I'm really excited about. I've been working with this company called Astral, and they've created this technology that ingests your content library of articles, podcasts, books, whatever, and they generate sort of a chat GPT out of it. And they did that for your morning coffee. So they took 100 of our podcast episodes that you and I have done. They've ingested it into this platform and created this. It's sort of like a chat GPT. And I put it in your morning coffee this week. And it is really cool. You can ask it questions. There's some canned questions that are there if you want to learn about certain things. And this is not just drawing from your opinion and my opinion. It's based on the articles that we report on, the reports that we report on, and also the guests that we have, our expert guests, and what they say. So it's pretty cool. And this last week, I spoke with Astral, their co-founder and chief product officer, Jack Bogdan. Sorry, Jack. About this technology and about Astral. Let's listen into that conversation. Jack, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Good to see you too.
Tell us a little bit about Astral. How does it work?
Well, what Astral does is it takes content libraries like Your Morning Coffee and turns them into learning engines for your audience. So that means anyone can go in and ask questions and have the answers sourced across, multiple podcast episodes. For other folks, it could be blog posts, books, courses, videos, you kind of name it. And what we can also do is pull key insights from that library so that folks can kind of dig in and learn more. And frankly, there's a lot of really exciting stuff that we have planned to kind of make all of that incredible knowledge more accessible, more actionable, and more fun for folks.
Tell me where you think, if you can use your crystal ball, where do you see this technology going?
Well, I think one of the amazing things right now is when you look at the pace of AI development, there's a lot of folks focused on, how do you build this be-all, end-all system? And I see that as the direction that most of these companies are taking, and it kind of removes the people from it. It makes it very a lot less personal and a lot less focused. We look at how AI can be a tool to empower people to kind of scale themselves and their knowledge kind of beyond what they could do alone. And frankly, our big bet is on people and their unique perspectives. So we want to help experts be more accessible than ever and create that more personalized and actionable experience for their audience way beyond what's possible today without getting you on the phone. And what's really exciting, I think, broadly about the technology is that it's advancing at such a pace now that I can't really tell you what's going to be possible exactly in 6 to 12 months. It's kind of like that science fiction moment in the 60s where you have the Star Trek communicator and then 50 years you get later you get the iPhone. But imagine that, but every year is basically kind of the situation that we're at with these models. But what I can say is when you build ethically, it's really impressive what you can do today. I mean, there are still limitations that we work around, but it's amazing what's possible.
Yeah, I am really excited to see what you build. Let's keep in touch on this thing, and congratulations on your launch.
Thanks so much.
It's just, this is one of those things that's just, it's coming fast and furious, and yet I'm still kind of blown away whenever I am introduced to different ways of skinning the cat, so to speak.
Yeah, I was
so
really
cool.
thrilled to see them create this, and I can see how it can be used for different businesses. Can you imagine, if you're a licensed therapist and you can put your knowledge base and all of your papers and all of your things into this, and your clients can not only come and see you, but part of that fee is they can get information on their own. And I think of it as things like, Billboard magazine. Wouldn't it be cool if all these issues of Billboard magazine were put into this platform, and then now you've got this knowledge base to draw from when you want research. So I think the possibilities are limitless. But if you get a chance, check out it's Your Morning Coffee, and I'm just jokingly referring to it as Your Morning Coffee GPT, but it's in Your Morning Coffee this week. And check out Astral, Astral. And thank you, Jack Bogdan, for coming on and explaining it to us.
Yeah, very cool. Jay, before we go further, what do you say we thank our sponsors? We are so lucky to have the greatest sponsors in the world, and it certainly couldn't do this show without them.
No, we couldn't. The Your Morning Coffee podcast is brought to you by our friends at Bandzoogle. Built by musicians for musicians, Bandzoogle is an all-in-one platform. It makes it super easy to build a beautiful website and EPK for your music. All the features that you need for a professional website. Everything is built right in. Hosting and a custom domain name, dozens of fully customizable design templates, tools to sell your music and merch commission-free crowdfunding and fan subscription features, mailing list tools to grow your fan list and send newsletters, social media integrations, and live support from their musician-friendly team 7 days a week. Your Morning Coffee podcast listeners can go to bandzoogle.com and try it for free for 30 days. Just use a promo code Morning Coffee, all one word. That'll get you 15% off your first year of any subscription. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code Morning Coffee.
And we are also sponsored by Hypebot. Since 2004, Hypebot has chronicled the new music industry and the trends and technologies that are changing how music is discovered, consumed, marketed, and monetized. It is edited daily by founder Bruce Houghton with help from Alana Bonilla. Hypebot and sister blog Music Think Tank are published by live music discovery and marketing platform Bands in Town.
Don't you know it? Bands in Town. Over 80 million live music fans trust Bands in Town to get personalized concert alerts, recommendations, and messages from their favorite artists. It's the #1 artist services platform connecting over 590,000 artists with their superfans. Managers, labels, agencies, and artists access their own dashboard to manage and promote their tour dates across all platforms.
And we are also sponsored by the Music Business Association. The Music Business Association creates the rooms in which the important conversations that shape our industry's future take place. Our membership represents every major segment of the global music business, including labels and distributors, music streaming, retail and wholesale, publishers and PROs, rights management and metadata, artist managers, tech, and startups. Visit musicbiz.org for more information. So huge thanks to Bandzoogle, Hypebot, Bands in Town, and the Music Business Association. We are eternally grateful. We being myself and Jay Gilbert when he is not flying to Nashville. He is a music industry consultant. He's the curator of the weekly Your Morning Coffee newsletter and a former executive with Universal Music, Sony Music, and Warner Music Groups, and an international man of mystery.
Yeah, I am. And this handsome gentleman across from me, Mike Etchart. He's a longtime host of Sound and Vision Radio, formerly of SST Records, Warner Music, Capital EMI, and Universal Groups, I should say, plural. And he and I were talking about The Ledger, which is Glenn Peoples' weekly Friday newsletter, one of our favorites. And he goes into the RIAA mid-year report, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But there's a couple of highlights I wanted to pull out of that you and I talked about that are super interesting. One is an article from Elias Light that he referenced called YouTube Loves AI and Hopes That You Will Too. Super fascinating read. We don't have time this week to dig into all of the stories, but that is a really good one, so check it out. And then the one I wanted to talk to you about, Mike, sort of the big elephant in the room this week was BMG is leaving ADA. BMG will handle its own distribution when they leave ADA later this year. And, you know, they're the 4th largest global music company. This is a big deal.
And this is, by the way, the new BMG, right? This is not the old BMG. That's one of the things that's so confusing when you talk about BMG is that the BMG that existed when we got in the business is now part of Sony Music. But this is the kind of reinstituted BMG. But that is huge news. They are an enormous beast. I mean, they have gotten so big relatively quickly. I'm trying to remember when they came back.
Yeah. They bought catalogs. They have all sorts of great artists. You know, it's like 80 billion streams a year. So it's a beast. And like I said, 4th largest global music company. This is a really big blow to ADA, you know, which is part of Warner Music Group. It'll be interesting to see what happens next, but it makes a lot of sense if you think about it that they take over their own distribution.
Yes, it does. Well, and I kind of tip my hat again when you see how quickly they've risen to the size that they are, BMG that is. It's happened in a relatively short amount of time. You know, they literally went away and came back, and of course BMG has a huge publishing books and things like that, the side of the business based over there in Germany, of course. So it's I tip my hat to them coming back in a way that I can't think of another situation or another company like that kind of divested themselves and then came back in a different form, so to speak. It's remarkable how quickly they've gotten big. Yeah. And if you're at ADA, how do you make up that business, though? That's tough. That is tough. Yeah. Ay. All right. Well, Jay, let's jump into some of the stories. What do you say? The first one from Billboard, 4 takeaways from the RIAA 2023 mid-year report. Prices rise, subscriptions slow, and more.
Yeah, this is a report that we talk about twice a year. And same with IFPI. And for those that don't know, RIAA is U.S., IFPI is global. So we're talking about U.S., the music business. And this was written by Dan Rice over at Billboard. And he said that, at $8.4 billion, the U.S. recorded music market set a record for revenue at the year's halfway point. And he talks about some trends in this article about why that is. And there are always a couple of surprises as you dig into these numbers.
Right. So he starts with ad-supported revenue flatlines. The RIAA reported that ad-supported on-demand streaming revenue came in at $870.1 million, just a 0.6 percentage bump over the $865 million it generated in the first half of 2022. Looking at the 2022 mid-year report, the ad-supported revenue figure was $875.5 million, up 16.4%. from the $748 million midway back in 2021. What it points to at best is a stagnant advertising market, and at worst, one that risks going backwards. He says, on one hand, it's not surprising given the adverse advertising market across the board in 2023 so far. On the other hand, it's yet another blow to a part of the model for services like Spotify and YouTube that has been maligned for years and considerably detracts from the value of music. Still, revenue from the other ad-supported streaming category grew 56.8% year over year for an increase of $58 million after a few years of negligible growth at best.
So that's ad-supported streaming. And a lot of people think that that's positive, that's sort of flatlining because there's so much more revenue in the subscription-based. So the second point, he points out is a big pricing shift. In the past 2 weeks, a lot of conversations in the music industry have revolved around how royalties from streaming services should be divided going forward. But the broader issue that many executives are and have been pointing to has been about pricing. Music streaming services have fallen behind the times in keeping the price of monthly subscriptions largely static over the past decade plus. So while video streamers, with fractionalized offerings, have really raised prices regularly, the Netflix of the world and the Hulus, I talk about that all the time.
That's right. Then he goes on to say, but it's not just streaming. Those streaming service price hikes got a lot of attention, and rightly so, but the industry is seeing increased revenue from consumers in more than just streaming. The physical product market has continued to grow in revenue, up 5% overall, with vinyl revenue rising 1.3% year over year, up to $8.2 million, and CD revenue growing up to 14.3%, up to almost $30 million. What's more interesting, apart from perhaps the winding down of the vinyl explosion double-digit increase narrative of the past several years, is that both formats grew in revenue while being down in unit count.
That's key, right? Both formats grew in revenue but while being down in unit count. So vinyl overall, it seemed to be a little static year over year. The number of records sold, it dropped about 400,000 units or so. So even as the revenue sort of ticked up, that's amazing. But the discrepancy in CDs was stark as well. Despite the double-digit revenue growth that's been associated with vinyl in the years past, there were actually 3.2 million fewer CDs sold in the U.S. in the first part of 2023 compared to last year. Whether that's a reaction to the hyper fandom of artists who tend to do well in physical market raising prices significantly, or a marker of an industry-wide price hike there, it's another example of how pricing is shifting across the industry and changing the revenue picture as a result.
And then Dan asked the question, subscriptions slowing down? As noted above, the average number of paid music streaming subscriptions grew by 5.8 million in the first half of the year to 95.8 million total. That represents the slowest level of growth, both in raw numbers and in percentage, since at least 2015, when the U.S. streaming industry was still in its nascent phases. The growth in the number of subscribers has been slowing down now for about 5 years straight as those who haven't already gotten on board with paid music streaming slowly sign on. But it's unclear how much room for growth remains, and either way, the focus will continue to shift from acquisition and retention to growing value.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway here is that we're seeing this slowdown in units and in usage, but revenue is ticking up. And we'll take a look at the report itself in a second. Just a last word for this RIAA double report or RIAA mid-year report. He points out that ringtones and ringbacks, remember those? U.S. consumers spent $6 million on them in the first half of 2023. What? And that it's basically flat. It did almost the same last year. That really surprised me that they even still have a Billboard ringtones chart. I had no idea that was still a thing. But let's take a look at that report. And there's a link in your morning coffee, so you can go right to this report. And at a glance, you can sort of see how revenue is going, whether it's wholesale or retail, again, for the first half of the year. But the first chart that I glanced at was U.S. recorded revenue in music, and it shows that streaming is pretty much the same as it was before. It's 84% of the business, while physical is 11% of the business. And I was really surprised, sort of surprised, that digital downloads are 3%, but as we reported in the last couple of weeks, certainly on the country music side, downloads are still a thing.
Yeah. And I still download music. It's if it's something that I want to have permanently, if I'm working out at the gym or things like that, I still like to have things on my digital device that I don't need to rely on an internet connection for. And so, but very interesting to see kind of the things coming out. And again, we seem to be getting to a point where we're not going to have much more growth, at least in subscribers, but it's encouraging that profitability is
there.
up.
It is.
Yeah. And we are still chugging along, and that is a good thought. And the whole thing with ringtones, though, kind of back to our earlier statement about, when I remember having conversations in the early 2000s about how important ringtones will be in the future, and then they're not.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like what you were talking about earlier, with the NFT craze. And digital downloads, if you look at the charts, that's the configuration that's been around the least of any configuration.
That's right.
When you look at,
Time-wise.
Exactly. You look at things like CDs and vinyl, cassettes, streaming, all of that stuff. We thought downloads was going to be the final configuration. Well, it's not.
Yeah.
And I think to think that streaming is the final configuration may be foolish as well.
Well, and we've mentioned this a few times on the show, but we were there for when we couldn't wait to get rid of vinyl. It was just move on. CDs are here, vinyl's in the rearview mirror. And if you would have told us then, and because we're talking now the late 80s, this is really, I would not have believed you if you said we'd be having this discussion in 35 years in the future, that vinyl is still a viable format.
Yeah. And
it would knock me over with a feather.
Yeah.
Never would have thought that at the time in the late 80s.
That's right. So it's a part of every plan that we do now to have vinyl, color variants, record store day, all sorts of things. So let's move into the next story, because this is super interesting, and it was from multiple sources. It talks about AI, artificial intelligence, in the music business, what you need to know. Excuse me. And it started off with this article that I saw in Repertoire by Matilda New. And the headline was AI in the music industry. And I thought it was super interesting. And we can just review some of these things that she points out, which I thought were really interesting. Like, number one, auto tagging, revolutionizing music metadata. Metadata is the pillar of the music industry. It allows artists, labels, and streaming platforms to categorize and organize effectively. With that said, tagging music can be a scary task for music businesses because it's challenging and can often take significant time. So that's one area where AI can be very effective for the music industry.
Right. She also mentions optimizing music management. Music businesses often manage enormous libraries of songs, making it difficult to keep track of every detail. However, AI-driven systems can help streamline music management by automatically organizing and cataloging music, I should say. She says, for example, they can categorize songs based on an artist, genre, and release date, making it more comfortable for music professionals to find and work with the music they require.
Yeah, that's really good. Number 3 was better royalty management. So these are all these really healthy things that AI can do for music, because you read about all of the things that it can do which are challenging for labels and songwriters. So better royalty management, one of the most vital aspects of the music business, is guaranteeing that artists and rights holders receive their fair share of royalties. This process has historically been cumbersome and error-prone, with many artists underpaid by music companies, and that's led to lengthy legal battles. But with AI, it's a game changer for royalty management. For example, AI-powered royalty management systems can track music usage across diverse platforms that can estimate royalties accurately and facilitate faster and more transparent payments.
Sure. And of course, curating playlists with precision. Playlists, needless to say, are a huge driver of music consumption on streaming platforms. The good news, AI-driven playlist curation tools analyze user choices, listening history, and the elements of songs to create personalized playlists for listeners worldwide. These intelligent algorithms can choose which songs are likely to resonate with particular users, improving the listening experience and keeping them engaged on the platform. But for music companies, this means better user retention and more exposure for their artists.
Yeah, and number 5, she points out, is efficient tour planning, right? So AI can help with that. Touring is one of the most important ways to make money in the music business. However, touring hasn't always been straightforward to organize, leading to logistical and financial issues. With the growth of AI, companies can use AI to evaluate a wide range of data, including social media engagement, historical sales, and that can help you make really good decisions about your touring.
Sure. How about content creation assistance? Content creation is a multifaceted process for music companies, encompassing everything from songwriting and music video production to marketing campaigns and promotional materials. Thankfully, AI technologies are becoming increasingly valuable in streamlining and enhancing these creative endeavors. And, you know, when you think about it, of course, there is just a lot of stuff that happens around the release of music. And, yeah, having this kind of an easy way of collecting all of these things, super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And AI doesn't necessarily take over all of these things. It just helps that it can give you a starting point. I was working with a friend the other day, and we just typed in, marketing plan for a certain artist into ChatGPT. And what it spit out was not something you could use as a marketing plan, but if you're stuck and you want some of those basics, it's, you're standing on the shoulders of giants. And number 7 that she points out is data-driven A&R decisions. And this is key. We're all looking at data, to help us make decisions on, what's the next big thing, what's bubbling up. And she points out that data-driven A&R begins with an exhaustive analysis of the music market. However, music companies can now utilize AI algorithms to sift through an immense volume of data from sources like streaming platforms, social media, and music blogs. And that data includes everything from listening trends, audience demographics, geographic hotspots, and even consumer sentiment towards artists and genres.
Yeah, good article. And it's again, there's the scary AI, which people kind of are in the headlines and things like that. But I think these are the things that I'm looking forward to. It's time saving, it is efficiency improvement, and this is super needed. And we've talked about this a bunch, especially in the music space. It used to be so much simpler. There's when you're marketing a band, when you're releasing music, when you're creating music, you just have so many more options and things now that make the process. There's just a lot to get your arms around.
Yeah.
And if anything to help that process, to simplify it, to organize it, to make it more efficient, I am super down with that.
Yeah, and so am I. And that's kind of one side of this argument. The other side, there was a really great piece. It was a guest column by Paul Williams, ASCAP president, chairman, legendary Paul Williams. The headline was "Protecting Writers in the Age of AI." And he pointed out a few things that we should touch on really quickly. One is he said that they want to have sort of rules and guidelines, that kind of that people adhere to when it comes to AI. And the first one he said was human creators first, prioritizing rights and compensation for human creativity.
Right. He also mentions transparency in identifying AI versus human-generated works and retaining metadata.
Yeah, and then he talks about consent, right? Protecting the right for creators to decide whether their work is included in AI training.
Right. And how about compensation? Making sure creators are paid fairly when their work is used in any way by AI, which is best accomplished in a free market, not with government-mandated licensing that essentially eliminates consent.
Yeah, good point. And then a couple more really quickly. One is he talks about credit. When creators' work is used in the new AI music, they should be attributed.
Absolutely. And of course, global consistency and even playing field that values intellectual property across the global music and data ecosystem. Because we are a global business, that is incredibly important.
Right. He goes on to say that just because AI requires a high volume of inputs, that doesn't mean that it can't be licensed, or deserves an exemption under the law. Just as we've approached the streaming market, we believe the opportunities presented by AI can be realized in a free market. But to do so, we need lawmakers to stand with songwriters and not give big tech and AI companies a free ride with government-mandated licensing for AI.
Right. He says AI is a new challenge, but we are well positioned to meet this challenge as we always have in the face of new technologies. We are ready to help chart the path, and we look forward to sharing those insights and breaking it down on the dance floor with the same lawmakers whose partnership and enthusiasm has helped us fight for the rights of songwriters as new technologies emerge.
Yeah, and I don't know if I mentioned this, but this is a sort of a guest column from Billboard. By Paul Williams. So it's nice to get both sides of the story because, as you and I say all the time, in the immortal words of Todd Snyder, there are three sides to every story: yours, mine, and the truth.
That's right. Oh, so true. But boy, it's coming fast and furious, Jay. Thankfully we've got the newsletter that you diligently put together every week because there's just so many things to consider as all these technologies are rolling out, and it's really hard to keep up. So I applaud you because I know you are up very late on Thursday nights organizing it.
It's a labor of love, but it's just so enlightening for us because anybody who says they're on top of everything in the music industry is either lying or they're naive because it's changed while you and I have been having this conversation. We say that often, and it's true. And even this week here in Nashville at Americana Fest, I'm learning all sorts of new things on ways to market music, on different players in the space, new platforms that you and I talk about all the time. So, subscribe to your morning coffee and go along on this ride with us, and we'll try to stay on top of this stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Where our last article, Jay, is from Symphonic, 6 music industry topics every musician should learn about.
Yeah, this is from Randy Zimmerman. And if you haven't read Randy's stuff, we cover it a lot in your morning coffee. We're big fans of not only Randy Zimmerman, but Symphonic in general. And I think I mentioned to you that Michael Burrows from Symphonic was the moderator of that panel that I was on. And unfortunately, our good friend Randall Foster couldn't make it to be the moderator of that panel. But he has a really great team over at Symphonic here in Nashville.
Right. Well, Randy starts this off by saying, as an independent musician, you are tasked with wearing many hats, from master producer to marketing expert. There is a lot to learn. Among these, there are many topics creatives tend to overlook. However, she says, we're here to help you out. From online marketing and streaming ideas to how-tos on licensing and more, here are 6 topics you should sharpen up on as an artist. And before we start this, Jay, you and I have talked about this a lot, which is, as an independent artist, you have to know so much.
It's impossible.
It's impossible.
It's such a nuanced business, and it takes years to sort of wrap your head around it. And I believe that it's unnecessarily complex, and maybe by design.
Yeah. Yes, I think you could make that case without a doubt.
Yeah, we're just trying to dispel some of those myths, number one, but also sort of, shine a light on some of these things because, my grandfather always said that an idiot is someone who doesn't know what you just found out. And that's the music industry. These things are changing and evolving, and it's very complex. So don't feel stupid if you don't know some of these things. But that's why I highlighted this article from Symphonic, and we'll dive in, because these are some things that may seem obvious to you, but there might be a couple in here that you don't know a lot about that you can sort of dig in and learn more about.
Right. Well, she starts with performing rights organizations, the PROs. You need to make sure you're registered with a performing rights organization like ASCAP, BMI, or CSAC. This is crucial because these are people that make sure you're getting paid every time your song is played. But don't stop there. You'll also want to look into mechanical royalties, which is the money you make when something is downloaded or sold on, say, iTunes, which ASCAP, CSAC, and BMI don't cover. If your personal research isn't enough, always consult a professional. She says, don't worry if this sounds like a lot. There are people whose job it is to help you with these types of things. And that person is a music publisher, and this post will tell you more about them.
Right. Let's talk about publishing. If you're a composer, you're writing your own songs, there's money to be generated that you're entitled to collect internationally, and you'll need help collecting it. So while many labels and artists first begin releasing music on Spotify, Apple Music, Beatport, etc., the business of publishing is often forgotten. So luckily for you, they've created a full comprehensive guide to the world of publishing, and there's a link to it in this article that Randy put together.
Right. And she goes on, next is contracts. Oy, indeed. Navigating the legal aspects of the music industry isn't always easy to do on your own. It can also cost you a ton of money to get professional advice or to help you if you mess up on your own. However, there are a ton of information available online and on their blog to help you learn more. One of the biggest things artists aren't typically well-versed in are contracts, and who is.
Right.
Whether you're faced with booking and live performance contracts, record label contracts, publishing, and the like, she says, we break down everything you need to know. And, Jay, I mean, again, when we first started in the music business, this was a complete and utter mystery. I remember Kenny Rogers had a book about being in the music business, and he touched a little bit on it, but not super in depth. And contracts is where you can absolutely make it or completely break it and crater your career.
100%. And I think one of the people who have helped us understand more than most is Donald Passman. His book is on pretty much every desk in the music industry. He's got a new edition coming out that you and I just got kind of an early copy of, and we're going to have him on and we're going to talk about it. His last version, which was a 10th edition, really has a lot of this digital stuff in there. But if you want to understand, how the sausage is made and things to watch out for in contracts, we highly recommend Donald Passman's book. And getting back to this piece, she talks about video platforms. And this is so important today because it's such a video world and a short form world, short form video. And she says that in today's day and age, video content reigns supreme. Amen. With resources like TikTok, Triller, YouTube Shorts, Reels, and much, much more, you can create high quality viral video content. And that can be shared across your social accounts, for example. These platforms are constantly changing as the trends go viral every day, so it's important to stay in the know. For example, it doesn't hurt you to know about things like, how YouTube Shorts and clips can help you grow your YouTube channel, how to find out what's trending on TikTok, how TikTok views can improve your Spotify streams, 7 places to share repurposed video content. And lastly, how to use Instagram Reels and Stories to reach more fans.
Yes, and of course, she also covers sync licensing, how to make your music licensable. Of course, sync is short for synchronization. So when you're talking about synchronization licensing in the business, it refers to the act of synchronizing a piece of music with any form of visual media. And again, how do you make sure your music is licensable? She's got a lot of tips in this article about that. And sync licensing has become such an important part of the business. It's huge given all of the video and movie content that's out there. Sync licensing, when we started, there was always a sync licensing department, but those guys were way down the hall in a little room. And now that is so crucial, not only for artist development, but also just for everything involved in music distribution and getting your career going.
And there's revenue there. That's the thing with sync licensing is we talk about this all the time. Where is revenue in the music industry? For middle-class developing artists, it's not in streaming. It's just not. If you're making, I don't know, $3,000 to $5,000 for every million streams roughly, and that gets paid to the rights holder, there's not a ton of revenue there for a lot of artists. But where there is revenue is touring and merch. But sort of in that close third is sync licensing. And it's not just movies and television, it's video games. And there's some artists out there who are making a killing on sync licensing. So in conclusion, Randy points out that, look, this is a lot to take in. To make things easier, they've made sure to provide links through this article to help you get in the right direction. So, check out this article. It's from the Symphonic blog, 6 music industry topics every musician should learn about. Really great stuff.
Oh yeah, good stuff. And I was speaking of sync licensing. I just went back to when I was at Capitol. The Postal Service was starting a campaign called "Fly Like an Eagle." When that's the name of your campaign, who are you going to?
Steve
You're
Miller.
going to Capitol Records to talk to Steve Miller. And as I recall at the time, just for the master side, and it was not like a super long commitment. I think it was maybe a year. I think he got $500,000 just on the master side for that.
And there are large syncs, and we've seen some of them. Mm-hmm. And now, if you're the Rolling Stones and Microsoft launches Windows and they have Start Me Up and it's $1 million,
yes.
But even for working class, artists, it's not uncommon to get a $7,500, $10,000 sync.
No.
And there are some artists who are making much, much more. It all depends on the usage and what kind of revenue that's going to generate. But you need to learn more about sync licensing for sure.
Well, and of course, it's on the master side and on the publishing side. So those are, a couple of different windfalls you can potentially get. On that note, Jay, it's time for you to get back to your Nashville fun. I'm a little jealous. I'm a little jealous.
You got to come out here with me next time.
I am overdue.
Yeah.
I am overdue for Nashville. Absolutely. Yeah. So I will. We would paint the town red, as they say, Jay. It would be a good time. So on that note, we do want to thank everyone for listening. Boy, Jay and I, every week before we even hit record, we talk about how blessed we are and how lucky we are to have folks that I know, Jay, at Americana Fest. A lot of folks are coming up to you and say how much they enjoy the newsletter and the podcast, and it's really gratifying to hear from our side, and we appreciate that. And we do not take it for granted. We also, of course, want to thank the folks that bring us to the party every week: Bandzoogle, Hypebot, Bands in Town, and the Music Business Association. And on that note, we will say thank you, and we will see you next time on the Your Morning Coffee Podcast.
You've been listening to Your Morning Coffee, the weekly music news program for the new music business. Join Jay Gilbert and Mike Etchart next time for the digital music news you need to know.